Okay, we will call to order the meeting of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. Today is Monday, February 7th of 2022. It is exactly 2 o'clock. America, do you mind calling roll for our meeting today?
Darren Balaam. I know he's there. We'll go back. Ivy Batmall.
Here.
Scott Benton.
Present.
Lorraine Benuto. She's not here yet. Charlene Bybee.
Here.
It's good to see you. Liz Flores.
Present.
Jessica Gogachia. Will not be able to be here today. Amber Joyner. Rhonda Lawrence.
Present.
Leanne McCauley Larson.
Present.
Peg Samples is not able to be here today. Natalie Sanchez should be coming. And Misty Von Allen.
Present.
Thank you. Roll call has been taken.
Thank you. Can we just note that Amber Joyner is present? We did not hear her say that she is, but she is here. Sheriff Balaam as well. Thank you. We will move into item 2.01, and this is introduction of new members of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission. This is for information and discussion only. I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Paula Marca.
Thank you, Chair Benton, for the record. Paul Lamarca, Chief Strategies Officer. I'm happy to introduce our newest member as Commissioner Sanchez joins us. Rhonda Lawrence applied to be part of the commission. Rhonda's with Department of Child and Family Services, and at the last Board of Trustees meeting, her appointment was approved. And so welcome, Rhonda. And Rhonda, would you maybe like to say a couple words to your fellow commissioners?
Sure. I'm very happy to be here. I'm a Nevada marriage and family therapist, and I'm currently the clinical program manager too over the Division in Children and Family Services, outpatient mental health, children's mental health services, including infant and early childhood mental health, outpatient psychotherapy for latency age children and their families, a psychiatric services program, and I'm also an interim clinical program manager in Southern Nevada as well. And I'm happy to be here and be involved in the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission.
Thank you, Rhonda, and welcome to the commission. And I just want to note it for the public that Dr. Benuto has arrived as well as Commissioner Sanchez. So we will move on to item 2.02, which is approval of the minutes from our last commission meeting of January 10th, 2022. Is there any public comment for this item, America?
No, Chair Benton, there is no public comment.
Thank you. Is there any discussion from the commission on these minutes that were attached to our email? Seeing that there's no discussion, I'm looking for a motion to approve the minutes from our last meeting on January 10th.
Lorraine Benuto, I motion to approve the minutes.
Thank you, Commissioner Benuto. Is there a second?
I second.
Thank you, Commissioner Sanchez. With that, we have a motion and a second. And seeing that there's no public comment, I'm looking for a vote. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Chair, if you could mark me as an abstention. I was not at the meeting, so I can't approve the minutes.
Thank you,
So I wasn't
Commissioner
here.
Brady.
Thank you.
This
So-
is Rhonda Lawrence, and I abstain as well. I was not at that meeting.
Thank you so much. So hearing that, we have the vote. Hearing that there is no opposition, we have 2 abstentions. The motion carries. Item 2.03 is a discussion of family engagement strategies used by the Washoe County School District and the parent-family communication as related to the district's threat assessment process and the COVID mitigation measures and compliance. This is for information and discussion only. I'm going to ask that Dr. Paula Marcus starts the presentation and invites other members to join.
Thank you, Chairman Benton. At the last meeting, there were a couple questions. I believe Commissioner Sanchez and Commissioner Joyner asked questions that involved parent engagement around some specific topics. And so we felt like maybe sort of a general overview of some of our family engagement strategies that are used in the district would be worthwhile for the commission, as well as we will talk briefly about threat assessment process and COVID mitigation strategies. Delisa Crane, who's the Director of Family School Partnerships, unfortunately is ill. She couldn't be here today, but her amazing leaders are with us. And so I'm going to introduce them, and they're going to come up and speak to you about family engagement. So we have Maria Fernandez, who is the Parent University Coordinator, Anna Anderson, who's a Family School Partnerships Coordinator, and Fawn Hunter, who is our Indian Education Specialist. I don't have the full title. Sorry, Fawn. But they're going to come up and join us, and they're going to walk us through that part of the presentation.
Awesome. Ladies, if you want to come join us, we welcome you to our meeting.
Thank you so much for having us today. As Dr. Lamarca said, we are the Family School Partnerships and the leader, Delisa Crane. My name is Maria Fernandez, and I'll start the presentation for you today. Go to the next slide, please. So here's an overview of all of our initiatives that we have, and it is tied back to our strategic plan in response to the recovery plan. Number one is parent-teacher home visits, and we'll go more into detail as we go. So for now, I'm just going to list them. The next one that we have is, it's kind of small, Parent University, which I lead the work for that. And then the next one is High School Family Graduation Advocates. That is Anna Anderson, as you already met her. And then the next one is Native Education and Culture Program. We do have other initiatives that are not listed here, that we do have some work in progress. So we'll just highlight these ones here. Like I said, they are tied to the response to recovery plan. And as we are living in a pandemic, we have changed some systems that we had in place to really accommodate the needs of our families. So we'll go in depth on parent-teacher home visits. If you can give me the next slide. This work is led by our colleague, Rochelle Salonia, and she is not here today, but I'll give you a few points that she shared with us. You can go to this next slide, please. So parent-teacher home visits is a research-based program that has a lot of research behind in terms of relationships. And as we know, family engagement is based on relationship, trustful, and also honest relationships with no biases and assumptions about our families. So through this program, we have worked with school sites to do visits with schools. Previous pandemic, we did in person. Now that we are living in a pandemic, totally different, we have done some virtual bridge visits, which we started last year with the work, and even though it was a switch for a lot of our school sites, basically all of them, they did amazing work with having home visits been very successful last year. This year, we asked the school sites to check with families in terms of their preferences. Do they want a virtual visit? Do they want an in-person? We know that for some of our families, it was best to have bridge visits, which is virtual. For some of our families, they want it in person, following the guidelines that we have with physical distancing and also wearing a mask. However, with the changes that we have, now we're back to only virtual. We're not doing based on the preferences of the families or the staff. Even though we're still doing virtual visits now, we're back on the virtual world, we still have some amazing leaders out there that are doing fantastic job when it comes to a virtual home visit. And families have voiced their happiness with the program. And as you can see, the numbers here reflected. We do have 120 school staff that were trained this fall. And we also have 24 schools that have done home visits so far. So I'll share with you the next slide is some of the voices from our teacher voice and also the family voice. Like I said, despite the pandemic and all of the changes that we have done with going into in-person now, virtual, we still have amazing leaders that regardless what is the model, they follow it and they go visit the families. Because as we know, in the research, relationships and getting to know the families will really open up the door for us to do more partnerships with families. And that brings me back to Parent University. We do believe that relationships make a difference. And we have been very successful with Parent University as school sites, where school sites are behind the program, where teachers are personally inviting families to attend the classes. We have done amazing work around literacy clubs, where it is a teacher-led program where they get to choose if they want to do it or not. However, they do build those relationships with families because they do see the families 5 times throughout the school year on top of their parent-teacher conferences. But every time they come back, they teach families one more skill that they can use at home in terms of literacy. We have been around since 2011, and so far we have served over 40,000 families in the past. Again, it was in person. Then we had to change our practices to explore the virtual world, which it was last year. We did some partnerships with Dr. Venuto and the university in terms of really targeting what families wanted and what families needed. We believe deeply on what is it that our families want, and let's meet the families where they are. So, there was a lot of information that was required or requested about mental health, taking care of yourself, helping your child with anxiety. So we did have some amazing partnerships starting last year, which we are still working on. One of the partnerships I want to highlight too is the Arts for All partnership that we have. Lots of the data coming back from Parent U classes was we really need a place where we can do some healing and connecting space. So as soon as we were able to have classes in person last fall, we did our art class, Lincoln Park, and it was packed. And the feedback from there was amazing. They just wanted some time with their family to really experience the healing process through doing an art project with their families. So definitely that was a great success. Again, before pandemic and after pandemic, we still have a great quality and usefulness of our classes. Families believe it's highly rated. So we do strive to do the best for our families because we know that they don't have a lot of time, and the time that they're with us, we need to make it meaningful and worthwhile. I also believe, and my team believes, that relationships. I go back to relationships, and we have some data from this year that goes into that. Data right now shows that out of all of the classes we had so far, 47% of our families attended high school options workshops that we had, as well as college access, 12%, and kinder transitions to 17%. And that is a tribute to relationships we have either with departments, school sites, and partnerships that we put together. I do want to point out that one of our goals is to really serve underserved populations and marginalized populations. However, some of our data right now is showing that there's a shift in Parent University. And a lot of the families that are accessing Parent University are not the same families that were accessing Parent University before the pandemic. So there's a big shift, and there's a lot of work we have to do in terms of going back and looking at the data and see how can we better serve our families. I'll give you a couple of examples of why we feel there's a shift. The first one is that looking at the data from last year, there are less Black and Latinx families represented on the program. So in the past, we were predominantly with these populations. Now their numbers are going down. The next one is very interesting, and it's zip codes. Before pandemic, the A9502 zip code was very significant in our data. It was 34% of our participants coming from the A9502 zip code, which we all know that in the past there's a lot of grants that went to the neighborhoods on the A9502 due to different factors that affects our families that live in the neighborhoods. Now there's only a 4% represented on our data. So that is a big disproportionality if you take into consideration previous years. The next zip code, which is a very important zip code in our community, is A9431. In the past, there was a 28% of participants that came from this zip code. Now we only have a 5% represented on last year. Same with, I'll give you two more, and then I'll let my colleagues also write on the spot. I'm very interested on data, as you can tell. A9521. In the previous years, there was only a 5% population coming from the A9521 accessing our courses. Now it's shifted to 11%. So last year, it went from 5 to 11. And then the next one is A9441. And previous years was 3%, now it's at 13%. So as you can see, A9521 and 9441 took over A9502 and A9431. And we know where our families live, we know where the needs are. So as a team, we have in our radar and in our heart that we need to more work when it comes to outreaching to our underserved populations and figuring out different ways to get to families, because we know virtual right now is not working for these zip codes. So we need to work with school sites, building trusting relationships, building the capacity of our families to feel welcome, and also their self-efficacy to feel that they can come up and be in a virtual class, that they have a voice even though it's virtual. So I think that's all for Parent University. I think I have another slide with some quotes from a teacher voice and a family voice, and I will leave you with that. I think next on the list is family graduate advocates. But if you have questions at the end, I'll be around. Thank you.
Hi, thank you for allowing us to share our information with you today. Next slide, please. Yes. I oversee the family graduation advocates at the secondary level. We have 9 existing FGAs that were started about maybe 7 years ago. So they've been already in schools already. And then with the ESSER 3 grant, we were provided funding to recruit 5 more positions at the remaining high schools, and we've hired 3 so far. We also have 1 middle school FGA, and that is through the Rally Grant. These are pictures of some of our amazing family graduation advocates, and they do amazing work. They reach out to families and build pardon me, I'm a little bit nervous. The family graduation advocates reach out and build relationships with families of students who show signs of not staying on track to graduation. And they provide them with the tools and resources so that they can stay on track. Some of the topics that they discuss with families are like setting goals, high expectations, monitoring their child's academic progress in Infinite Campus Parent Portal. They also collect data from the conversations that they've had with their families. Excuse me. And that information is inputted into Infinite Campus, and it allows us and the school leaders to see what the FGAs have discussed with families and what next steps are into helping them with their students. So the FGAs collaborate closely with the counseling department or school counselors, student graduation advocates, social workers, safe school professionals, the intervention department, so that everybody's on the same page and we're not duplicating or undoing the work that somebody has already started. And then we also don't want to be communicating too much too often with the same families because that really causes a disruption with the relationships. The FGAs also collaborate closely with Parent University, TMCC, UNR and other community organizations to help build the skills and knowledge of the family so that they can better support their students through college and career readiness and financial aid workshops and other topics that they may want to know more about. It's so important for the FGAs to build these trusting relationships with families because it actually gives them an insight as to what's happening within the home, within the student and the families themselves. I kind of wanted to share some of the topics that the FGAs have been hearing from their students and families, and there's a lot of disconnect, a lot of disengagement and motivation. Many students have told the FGAs that they don't want to come to school. They don't see the point of coming to school or even of graduating from high school, which is very saddening. They just want to be able to work and help provide for their families because it's so hard during this pandemic. There is a high level of stress and anxiety and other mental health concerns. So it's so important for our FGAs to be connecting and providing resources to our families so that we can better support them and understand where they're coming from. Thank you.
Okay, that leads us into, sorry it's so small, Native American Education and Culture Program, which is the Title VI Indian education grant that comes down from the feds. With this grant, we are under Family School Partnerships, and we provide summer reading. This last summer, that was a jump off to our grant year. So we provided summer reading to all of our families with culturally responsive books, and that's through K-12. Our books that we did purchase were from Native American authors to try to inspire our students to become authors themselves. With this, we did collaborate with Reno Sparks Indian Colony, or connect with, and Pyramid Lake Paiute Tribe. So we dropped off books in the communities, and we also hosted a book support at Riggins Court itself. And then we offered, when we put the flyers out to the community, we had also community members donating from their own library. So some students received more than one book for our summer reading program. We also provided summer school activities, which was the safe school activity, the self-care activity was for our high school students. For all the virtual learning and everything that was going on, we did the eye patch, where they did their own sewing of their eye, not the eye patch, but the relaxation with the rice and the lavender, and then we did some activities with that for our high school students for the summer. Once we jumped off back to school, we provide back to school backpacks for our families. With that, we tried to provide all the supplies that were on their list, except for like the Kleenexes and stuff, but the normal school supplies that they needed in the classroom. We provided 450 families with back to school supplies within our Native American communities. Supporting our families also is in our world language courses, and that's in 3 classrooms, 3 high schools, 3 classrooms. And that's to provide cultural knowledge and the preservation of our language within the district. We also have professional development that comes out of our Title VI, and that's by request of the admin at the school, and then we provide culturally responsive PD on how to connect with our Native American families and communities, and then provide them resources as well. We also have student graduation advocates that are pretty similar to our FGAs. And I collaborate a lot with Anna in a lot of our training and stuff we do for our SGAs. With our student graduation advocates, we have, as of new this year, 1 full-time, because we've never had full-time positions. We've always had part-time positions under this program. So we have 1 full-time Title VI, 2 part-time Title VI, and 2 full-time that are granted through ESSERS. So we've been able to connect with some of our kiddos, build that relationship, and hoping to bring back some of that disconnect that happened during our virtual learning and during the COVID when we first went in. So with that, we do our data collection with the visits and students just to see where we're at and if it's changing with our full times. We also have collaborations with our counselors, school workers, intervention, and we also are kind of like a stepping ladder for some of our social workers. They come to us as working in the part-time, and then they jump up to our safe school positions once they finish at UNR or some of the other positions within our district. We also focus on building trust and relationships. That's the most important and key aspect to the Title VI SGAs, because we look for someone that we can trust in our school buildings, and it's usually that SGA that we use as our advocate when our parents and students are having issues. They use that one person to go to, and then able to connect to the school counselors and people in the building better. And so that's how Title VI runs, and thank you. And again, if we have any questions at the end, like Maria said, thanks.
So as I mentioned at the beginning, those are our major initiatives. We do have other initiatives, as you can see on the PowerPoint, that we're working on. We're very excited about the Newcomer Family Welcome Center and supports. We are partnering with the English Language Development Department and the refugee settlement. We are looking at how do we support our students that come in not knowing the language, and as well the families, right? Because that's a big component of being successful in this country. Full service community schools, that is work that the Lisa Crane is taking up on with tons of partnerships, and a lot of you are part of that. And then ongoing community national resources for families and school staff. So we do have a big presence on social media for our families with lots of resources, and a lot of them are not created here. They're also from other parts of the nation. So we do definitely focus on building the capacity also of our own internal personnel, which is the SGAs, which is the Student Graduation Advocates, the High School Family Graduation Advocates, and we also collaborate with Title I to ensure the FACE liaisons are on the same page because we are all working towards the same goal, which is supporting families, which at the end is student achievement. And that's all. I think I have one more. Sorry, I'm like trying to rush it up in 15 minutes. So ongoing challenges, this is just a combination of across all of our initiatives. This is what we've seen trending the most. Definitely we see the disproportionality coming in our specific communities due to the pandemic. And then the other one that is big is the technology gap. We knew we had it before the pandemic. Now it's more visible, and it is creating those divisions between our communities and seeing who can access virtual and who cannot, or who knows how to access a computer or even has the technology at home. I mean, we have families that only have 1 or 2 computers, and there are multiple individuals in the household that needs to use the computer, and that creates some inequities. We do have some issues with labor shortage and a lot of positions. As you can tell, that's a nationwide issue, but we definitely are feeling it here in our programs. And the disruptions in our programming, right? Because we go, oh yes, we can do in person, yes, we can do this, and then we go, no, never mind, we'll go in virtual. So our families feel a little bit like all over the place, but definitely we're trying to ease that as much as we can, for sure. And I think that finalizes, and I know Dr. Lamarca has a few more things.
Thank you, Maria. I don't know, Scott, if you would prefer to maybe open it up for questions now. I will say that we emphasize school climate as part of instructional practice. If we expect children to learn, they got to feel as if they belong, and our families have to feel like they belong. So these guys spend their time working with schools to build an inclusive environment, one that fosters a sense of belongingness, one where children want to be there. Pandemic has been incredibly rough on families. You see some of the shifts. I'd be remiss if I didn't comment on the work these guys did in the spring of 2020. I mean, like everyone, they've been working tirelessly throughout the pandemic. But in the spring of 2020, when this thing first hit us and everyone was scared to death, it was amazing the kind of technological resources that were provided, the outreach that occurred. These 3 individuals have been with us for a very long time. They're experts in their field. So we are going to talk a little bit about threat assessment and just resolution process, as well as COVID. But is there any questions that we would maybe want to entertain?
Certainly, we can open it up to the commission for questions for, and I'm sorry, I wrote down Maria and Anna and Fawn. Thank you.
Chair, I had
This
more of a
is-
comment than a question.
Go for it, Commissioner Sanchez.
I just wanted to say, my gosh, like that, top to bottom, that's so phenomenal. And we're just so lucky to have you guys holding up, seriously, the infrastructure to do all of that. And my one question was, is how do I get families or individuals in contact with you guys?
You can either have them call our office, 775-799-4680, and we have bilingual people answering our phones. You can also, depending on the question or what do they want to know, they can also email us. And we do have a parent university email that all of my colleagues can also have access to. And I can give it to you if you want. It's parentuniversity@washingtonschools.net.
Perfect. Thank you. You guys are amazing.
And social media.
Awesome. Thank you.
And it sounds like Commissioner Flores, you had a question. Go for it.
Again, more of a comment, not a question, but I wanted to commend this group. It's really impressive. Coming from also a human services agency, family engagement is one of the most difficult things that we attempt to grow within our business. And there's often a challenge of our constituents having a general mistrust of the system. And what I'm seeing here are really tremendous efforts towards breaking that mistrust down and really endearing themselves to developing relationships that demonstrate compassion and that everybody's going in the same direction towards helping kids and family. So not a question, but just a comment. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? I did have two, but I will leave it to the Commissioner. Yes, Vice Chairman.
Thank you, Chair Benton. Thank you so much. It makes my heart happy that you're out there. And you had a challenge that you all are working on with mental health and family engagement. Any thoughts on how we can help with that and improve that? It's a challenge for all of us, I know.
Yeah, we're actually under Parent University. We are starting to explore how do we bring a wide range of opportunities for families when it comes to mental health. There's a lot of, I will say, stigma around it. And as you dig deeper into other communities of color, there is a bigger stigma, right? So how do we really use the mechanisms we have in place to strategize and bring the word out of like taking out the stigma and really give them access? So it goes back to the relationships. How can you help us? I definitely see when we have that meeting, I'll write down your name and a couple of others. Definitely exploring how can we support, right? And not only giving the information of what mental health entails and the differences between the world of mental health, but also the resources. Because we do live in Northern Nevada where resources are very limited. There are a lot of long waits, waiting lists for families. So I will say, once we roll out another section of Parent U that is enhanced with mental health, self-care, how do you stay well when it comes to your mental health, I think it has to be paired up with resources, because the last thing we want to do is give families all of this knowledge and then they go out and look for a therapist or a place where they can connect with other families, and there's none. So how do we really build a system together as a community to support our families, especially our families that don't have access to, due to their health insurance or their status, to high quality mental health resources.
Thank you so much.
Let me just add on real quickly. Parent University has been supporting the Children's Cabinet with living ideation, and that kind of got knocked off a bit because of the recent upsurge with Omicron. It's been hard though because of the virtual format, and as you know, providing sort of support, almost therapy through that medium is difficult when you don't already have trusting relationships. And then I think it was
There's
Maria.
one more.
Or Anna mentioned community schools, and we've talked about that a little bit as well. Delisa's been probably sort of the one that's been mothering this the most, and that's this collaborative effort with UNR and others to bring co-located services into schools, not just around mental health, but around basic needs, but including mental health.
And one more thing I forgot to mention is also the partnership with Children's Cabinet with the mental first aid kit. So we rolled it out on North Valleys, and we invited O'Brien, Stead, and North Valleys high school families last fall, and it was very successful. It was all in Spanish. So families were very, very thankful that we had it. So we are looking at expanding it this year to other school sites. Right now, we're only looking at Spanish, because they have the capacity to support in Spanish. I know the English is a little bit difficult because they do it like in a whole day, like 8 hours, and for our families, it's very difficult for them to get a day off to just go to the training. So right now, we're trying to do small baby steps with the Spanish, and then hopefully we can move into the English sections like that as well.
So Maria, I have a question for you. I know that we talk about the struggle with the virtual setting for some of the families that we're trying to serve through Parent University. Have you looked at schools hosting it in a virtual setting for, I know we targeted 89502 and 89431 as being a large population that we served in the past, and now we're not being able to serve them, but maybe just hosting it at a school so social distancing can happen. But knowing that those locations, we dropped the people that we're serving, having it maybe hosted on one of the nights that we host it virtually in the cafeteria, it can still be hosted virtually, something like that. Have we looked at that?
Yeah, we have 2 examples where we did it like that already, which again, we're trying to explore a little bit more. One was at Booth Elementary, where we had the teacher was virtually and some participants were virtually, and Eloisa was able to have a laptop for each of the participants there to connect. And she was trying to build their capacity as well, because I love the idea of just having a projector and, everybody sees it there, but she was going deeper. She was going into like, how do I build their capacity right now so they can go home next time and do it? And then the next one was at Duncan, right before we stopped doing classes. It was, I think, January 11th. It was a Friday. It was before we stopped because of the searches. And it was virtual. We had about 10 families. However, it was planned to be, as you indicated, in the library with all of the families there virtually. But because of the change on now we're going all virtual, we did it only virtual and everybody was at their home. So we did have some families showed up. But yeah, we're definitely trying to see that idea that you just presented. How do we really implement it and have families there with social distancing? I think it goes back to what leadership is asking us to do. And right now we went back to virtual. But definitely once they say go back and do it in person, I think we want to explore that. In case we go again into virtual, families have that capacity to explore it themselves.
Okay. And then my other question is for Anna. You said that you had 9 family graduate advocates. Can you tell me where they're, how is it decided where they are located? Is it like school nurses where they cover a certain area? Or is it strategically placed based on lower graduation rates?
Yes. So yes, they are strategically placed based on the moderate to high risk number of students. So at one time we had 12, but then we lost 2 or 3 to budget concerns. And so then we had to move one FGA that was at Reno High, say, to another school that had a higher percentage of moderate to high risk students.
Okay.
So right now, the existing FGAs are at North Valleys, McQueen, Reed, Spanish Springs, Sparks High, Galena, Washoe Inspire, Worcester, and Incline High School. And then the new FGAs through the ESSER 3 grant are at Reno, digging deep here, Innovations, North Star. Those are the ones that we've hired. oh, excuse me, North Star is not hired. Hug, we just hired the one at Hug, and we're still looking for positions at North Star and Damani Ranch. And then the middle school FGA is at Swope.
Thank you.
Scott, if I can just elaborate a little bit. Anna talked about the risk index. So similar but different from ACEs. For years now, we publish for every student, and it's actually on an ongoing basis, a risk index based on a variety of circumstances. And so we use that data, we ask schools to use that data to build relationships, not to track students, certainly not to track students, but identify early on students that might have some needs different than others. And it's been a useful tool, I think. Our counselors use it, our family graduation advocates use it, our student graduation advocates do it. They're a little bit different than the family graduation advocates. But it's an important tool that we've used, I don't know, Debbie, about 10 years now in the school district.
Okay. Thank you very much. I appreciate all three of you. Any other questions from the commission? No. Okay.
So we'll continue, and in your packet, I believe you were provided a PDF that just had some excerpts from our behavior manual, as well as a couple of pages that were at our website. And we just wanted to bring this to your attention. We don't have to have a long conversation, but at the last meeting, thank you guys.
Dr. Lamarca, just to interrupt for just a minute, we weren't provided that. It was provided online, but none of us have it.
It was in the Teams. When I sent the Teams, it should have been.
Yeah, so like in person, we don't have it. So I'm looking at it from the board
Okay.
docs, but
Oh, okay.
we're all looking for it on paper and we don't have it.
It's up on the screen now, and you can take a look at it later, because we're not going to talk about the information in here in great detail. It's more sort of as examples. But there were questions about the threat assessment process and really the feedback loop to parents, I think. And then also Commissioner Joyner asked about when there are questions coming from families regarding COVID mitigation strategies, how do we handle that sort of a thing? At least that's what was in my notes. So the first few pages that are in this excerpt, we'll make sure you all have it, is from our behavioral manual. And we do describe the threat assessment process, because this is something that you have to take very seriously within a school district, anywhere in today's day and age. There are a variety of things that a student might do that will prompt us to conduct a threat assessment. I mean, obviously, threats to other students or threats to staff members are going to prompt this kind of a process. It's in general a two-step process. There's an initial inquiry that's conducted typically by the principal or the AP or someone that's very much involved with behavior. And they don't like it when I summarize it this way, but essentially they conclude whether or not it's a transient or very low level of concern, or if it's medium or high. If it's medium or high, that prompts, hopefully, a comprehensive threat assessment. This is a team process, usually led by the school psychologist, which requires parent consent. So that's the first point in time. A parent obviously is going to find out very quickly, even if a threat inquiry has occurred, although because of safety in the building right now, that might actually take place before the parent is contacted, because that might occur within the first 10 minutes of the fight or the threat or the whatever. If we have to do a comprehensive threat assessment, parents provide permission. It involves a series of interviews with students, with teachers, with family. And really the hope of the threat assessment is to determine whether, for example, a child actually has a plan. Again, is it transient? Do they have a plan? Do they have a means for carrying out something? But really it's to develop a safety plan around a child so that they can continue in their education safely as everyone else within the building where the threat may have occurred. So that requires feedback to family to help them understand the conclusions and what the next steps are. going forward. So I'm hopeful that communication is very fluid when a family finds themselves in that kind of a situation. And if certainly, if that hasn't occurred and anyone comes in contact with that sort of situation, they could contact us and we can look into that. Similarly, as part of the behavior manual, the pages that you have there behind the threat assessment are what we call matrix elements. So we developed this matrix that says, this is what you do when there's a fight. This is what you do when there is a bomb threat. This is what you do when there's foul language. And so with COVID, we had to develop, this is what you do when kids aren't following the mitigation strategy. So there's some description of that in there. But again, it really is a matter of, if a child is refusing to wear a face mask, or when we were doing social distancing, if a child or a staff member for that matter were refusing to do what was being asked of them, then there's sort of progressive steps that are used to try to get compliance. Ultimately, a child could have been asked to go home and receive education digitally if they just couldn't comply, and there wasn't a reason for the lack of compliance. If they couldn't comply with mitigation strategies. The final sections in this excerpt are taken directly from our website, and it's really high-level information regarding how a parent, for lack of a better word, complains if there's a problem at a particular building that they can't solve. I can tell you, at least informally, what we always try to do is have a parent first work with a teacher, then work with a principal, then typically work with an area superintendent. We do have some informal means of sort of conflict resolution if a parent doesn't choose to fill out a formal complaint. If they do choose to fill out a formal complaint, and it's okay to do that, sometimes we're able to resolve things very well through that process, then we have a published process around that. And really, I think the idea of sharing this with you is to let you know we have means for communicating with families, we have processes in place, and we can always get better. We don't always get it right. So I'm going to be quiet now and see if there are any questions.
I'm going to send it out to Commissioner Joyner. She sent me a message that her microphone on her computer is not working, but she's logged in on her phone, so we can hear her there. So I'm going to send it to her first, if that's okay. Commissioner Joyner?
Hi, thank you. Thank you. Can you hear me today?
Yes, thank you.
Sorry, I'm told my computer is too old, and so short of buying a new computer, I'm trying to communicate with you all. No, I appreciate all of these presentations, especially since Mr. De La Marca said that, it was in response to my questions at previous meetings. And all of the previous presentations, seeing that Parent University and the home visits and everything are working well despite the challenges. I just am so grateful for that. I know that those programs work empirically. We've seen over the years that they are very helpful for families, especially making sure kids don't fall through the cracks, and everything from literacy help to graduation rates to everything like that. So I applaud those staff so much. I think this most recent presentation was more along the lines of what my question was. And, my experience as a parent, it was never the students who were not following the mask rules. For example, it was the principal, the librarian, the teacher, the substitute, adults in the campus that were not enforcing and not wearing them themselves. And so this all came to a head about 2 weeks ago at my son's school, and I've been really trying not to name names, name schools, name principals. But, I did go through the escalation process, worked with the principal, got nowhere. She refused to enforce it, went to the area superintendent. I called and emailed the superintendent 12 days ago and have not received a response. So just as a parent out here, not looking for any special treatment, not knowing how to navigate anything, I'm hitting dead ends when my son's school is extremely unsafe and people are not wearing the masks. So I like that you lay out, here's what we do if a student doesn't comply, but I still don't see information about what if the climate at that school and the culture at that school is that parents cannot complain. there's a culture of intimidation. And I mentioned this 2 meetings ago. There's a culture where I asked the other parents, why didn't you say anything? And they said, well, I don't want my kid retaliated against. So I know there are whistleblower laws out there. I am not afraid of you, school district. But as a parent out here, seeing schools, entire schools, where the culture is to look the other way, that is the problem. And parents do not have an avenue to make complaints. And I've tried, and I've had no response. So I don't want the same thing to happen to other families. I happen to not be afraid to say something. I happen to have, be able to have the time right now to make phone calls and emails, which is a ridiculous amount of time. But it's not okay to just say, here's what we do if a student's bad. What do you do when the principal is not following state law? And I don't understand why the police are not involved. If this were any other law, there would be ramifications, and nothing is happening. So why do the schools not have to follow state law? And that's where I am as a parent right now, with examples in both of my children's schools.
Chairman Benton, you're looking at me as if I have an answer.
I mean, I'll attempt to answer it the best that I can. I think, Commissioner Joyner, I appreciate your passion, and I see it. I know you're passionate about your children. And I think my response to you as the chair of this commission is, let's see what we can get through by going to Gina Sessions. Have you talked to Gina? I mean,
I have communicated with the superintendent. That was so no, I have not talked to Gina. And that was actually another question when you say there's a formal complaint procedure. That is not visible to parents at all. So if there was a form I was supposed to fill out, that was lost on me. I was sending emails. I have a paper trail. I have phone messages. But if there's a form, again, going back to parents need to know these avenues and what they are allowed to do, because right now we have absolutely no way to communicate.
And Paul, I do want to make sure we stay on the agenda item. We can talk about general COVID-19 mitigation measures and communication with families. But we don't want to go too much into specifics regarding certain situations in schools.
Thank you for the
right, and I'm happy to do this under public comment. I did message the chair and say I could do this under public comment. I'm happy to do that just as a parent, and if that's more appropriate, I understand. I've really been trying to work through the channels for months on this. I'm just expressing this frustration because it shouldn't happen to other families. It's ridiculous.
And I appreciate those comments, Commissioner Joyner. Under the guidance of legal counsel, we'll end the conversation there so that we don't stray too far off of the agenda topic. But I would certainly get with Dr. LaMarca and see where you can go with the conversation, maybe in a private conversation, not under... Or you can do it under public comment.
Okay, and honestly, I've been trying to be professional for months, ever since September when this started happening in my son's school. And so I feel like a public meeting like this is an appropriate place for a parent to say what is actually happening in the school district. And so if I have to do it under public comment, I will. I really respect the chair and that we have a lot to get through today. But it is not okay to say to a parent, we're going to take this to a private conversation, because that has not worked.
No,
and
but
parents
I don't want
need to know that they can come to a public meeting and express what is exactly happening in their children's school.
And please, Commissioner Joyner, I don't want you to think that I'm trying to silence your voice. I think public comment is the appropriate place for that. And I look forward to hearing it there.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. And I'm going to turn it over to Deputy Superintendent Beiersdorf. She has something to say.
I'm looking at our legal counsel, Ms. Montalvo, and I'm going to be very careful, but just wanted to introduce myself to the commissioners. I'm Deborah Beiersdorf, and I'm the Deputy Superintendent for the school district, and I'm here this afternoon. I think I might be at your next 2 meetings in place of our superintendent, Dr. McNeil, so I have been taking notes. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Superintendent. Are there any questions, comments on Dr. LaMarca's presentation on the mitigation plan, or his presentation on how the district's threat assessment and process, or the COVID mitigation plan and measures? Yeah.
This is Liz Flores.
Okay.
I do have a question.
Yes, Commissioner Flores.
Thank you. In looking through the process, I see that on some of the strategies, it includes school police for notification on battery to district employee causing injury, and threats to staff and students. It says contact school police, if I'm reading this correctly. When the threat assessment and student safety plan is developed, are school police involved in that, or it's unclear to me, or is it the psychologist support only?
Thank you for the question, Commissioner Flores. School police will be involved to an extent. If the comprehensive threat assessment occurs, that's a team approach. So the school psychologist will lead it, but it will also involve the entire safety team. And the safety team minimally includes the counselor, the school psychologist, and the site-based administrators. Then on an individual basis, it might involve a school nurse. It may involve school police. Certainly in a case of like battery where you were reading, it would likely involve school police, especially if the safety plan were to include elements such as backpack checks or some other safety measures. And typically the reason why they would be included is to exclude them from that process. So we're not going to have school police searching a child daily. But for the safety of the child in the school, with agreement with the parent, administration might search on an occasional basis without cause for search, so to speak. So they are part of the safety team, but it's on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you.
Commissioner Sanchez?
Just a quick comment. That was super helpful, and that clarified the process for me. So thank you.
Any other commissioners with questions or comments on item 2.03?
I do have a quick question then.
Yes, Commissioner Joyner.
On this topic specifically. So we're just trying to get information out there to parents. If a parent does think that, that the law is not being followed on their campus, then they should go directly to campus police. That would be good for parents to know. And I feel like that information needs to get out there. Is that what I'm hearing from this presentation? That like as a parent in September, I should have gone to the campus police?
No.
Instead of the principal and the channels that were normally presented to parents?
Thank you for the question. No, we would recommend that we follow the typical process of first working with the classroom teacher, then working with administration, then working with area superintendent. Now, if there is a safety issue that someone observes that is urgent and threatening, and there is a school police officer within sight, then I would probably run over to the school police officer and tap him on the shoulder. But the school police officer, it depends on the schools as well. We don't have school police officers at every elementary school, at every middle school. They cover them, but they're not there all the time. So that's not an avenue for typical resolution. Informal problems, meaning problems where we think we can solve them informally, ought to be handled with school site personnel. If we exhaust those methods and they're no longer, that's just not an avenue, then we should use our formal complaint process. And there are links at the website where those pages are that show these forms. And we'll get that out to you guys, but I don't disagree that maybe that's not visible enough to the public, and we can look at that internally.
Thank you. I think it's a fascinating question. Chair, if I may just clarify it. The issue of physical threat, I think we typically think of as violence or guns or, immediate threats. But a spreading virus is an immediate physical threat as well. And I think that may be part of the problem with the culture that's going on and what I'm seeing in the schools that I'm personally involved in is that it's not being seen as a physical threat. It is a health issue that is an immediate physical threat, and it's not being taken seriously like that. And that may be the problem that I'm seeing. It's not something that can just wait if the librarian doesn't have her mask on while she's reading to all of the students, and it goes on for weeks. That is an immediate threat, a physical threat to the students. And that is not being taken seriously from what I'm seeing. And I think that definition may be the problem. Because to me, it is an immediate physical threat, every bit as much as somebody with a knife. It's a physical threat, but it's not being seen that way. So that may be something to look at.
Great comments, Commissioner Joyner. I agree. It's something that we can certainly look into.
Thank you.
Any other comments from the commission? With that, we'll close item 2.03 and go on to item 2.04, which is the continuation of our discussion from the previous agenda item 2.02 from our January 10th meeting. And possible action to finalize goals and activities of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission for the remainder of our 2021-2022 school year, aligned with Goal 5, Safe and Welcoming Schools of the District's Strategic Plan, Road to Recovery, and review our previous goals and objectives of the Commission, soliciting input from the members of potential strategies and for areas of focus for the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission for the remainder of the school year. We can, I'm going to flip over to those ideas that we talked about, which I don't really have. So continuing the conversation that we had at the last meeting was really some, I'm going to flip pages here. We had some goals that we really talked about as a commission on how to align our goals with the safety forums that we were getting ready to plan. I think it was my motion that we made that we were going to ensure that there were resources available for those that were severely emotionally disturbed. Continue to hold the forums for the parents, ensuring that the families understood the reporting policies around COVID compliance, ongoing training and information and updates from the community, our community partners, and working with communications to promote the work of the Safe and Healthy Schools Commission to get the word out of what we do. So with that in mind, I think we can talk about those if those are something that we still want to continue to work on, and how those align with the strategic plan. I think, I don't know what I think right now. I don't know what I'm thinking. And I think this was just brought to the table so that we knew really what the work of the commission is doing for the remainder of the year, so that we had an idea when we started talking about topics of our safety forum. We wanted to know what the commission has on their mind of what the work should be, so that we can bring in subject matter experts if we needed to, or if the commission had the subject matter experts sitting here, or if they're within the district, so that when we plan our safety forum, we really want those two alignments to happen between the forum and the commission's work for the remainder of the year. And to bring everybody up to speed, historically we focused on the safety of the buildings, and then we took a real sharp pivot about 2 years ago to pivot on mental health and the safety of the students within the district, and then also those that are involved with the students, that their mental health is a priority. So we took that hard pivot about 2 years ago. Coming up next month, 2 years ago, this pandemic happened. So now, as one person, I feel like we can align both of them. There's so many more things that are happening in our district. We've talked about overdose and sex trafficking, and we've talked about driver safety, we've talked about gun safety, we've talked about absenteeism, we've talked about how those can all align with mental health and the safety of the buildings that our children are in. So we want to make sure that we have an idea of what you guys want to do as our work for the next 6 months, or the remainder of our 6 months. Yes, Commissioner Bybee.
Okay, I'm trying to clarify. We're not talking about the forums right now. We are
I'm
talking about the goals and objectives for this commission as we finish out this school year.
Here's what I will do. I will open item 2.04 and 2.05 together so that we
Okay.
can talk about both of them. That's what I did at the last meeting.
Okay.
As long as legal counsel is okay with that. So I will open both of those
Okay.
items together since they can align together. So I will open 2.04 and 2.05. 2.05 is the discussion and possible action to determine content, logistics, and marketing of our 2022 annual safety forum.
Okay. And I think obviously the goals and objectives of this commission are critically important now more than ever. I mean, it's interesting. I was here from day one. So I think Misty and I were both here from the beginning. And
Commissioner Joyner.
And Commissioner Joyner, yes, Amber was here too. And we were looking at that time at all the physical safety. We were looking at, the Parkland shooting. We were looking at, way past Columbine, but we were looking at, and I in particular volunteered for this because I'm in Sparks, and Sparks Middle School happened. So really the physical threat to our campuses and our kids, and we addressed that, and we did Columbine locks, we did single point of entry, we did fencing, perimeter fencing. We kind of amped up all those, so many things on that aspect, because that was really what I felt kind of was the immediate focus. And we always knew that safe and healthy, that the healthy part of it was important. And obviously Misty Von Allen is our expert on the health part of it. But I really have seen, as we've transitioned from getting a lot of the physical safety aspects of security. So let me look at it from a security standpoint to what the threats, or not threats, but how can we make our schools safer and healthier, and our kids and families. I really see the shift that the pandemic has accelerated for us of the mental health component and the mental health conversations that are happening in this community and have been happening in the community. And a lot of us are at a place of frustration where it seems like we talk about it a lot. And whether it's the homeless and what we're doing as a city and a region for homeless and wraparound services, to our counseling department with the schools, there is work being done, but it just feels like it's not enough across the board, from our kids to adults to the homeless to our elderly. The mental health piece, and in particular for me recently, especially, is suicide. And obviously we've got one of the best people in the country here to help us with that. But we lost another child last week in our schools. And it just, I just feel my priority for me on how we can address the health side, especially since COVID has had such an impact on, we do, social, emotional learning, but what have we amped up and really done or can do better to really address the human connection that we've all lost? We're sitting here on screens looking at each other. We're in the room today, but even when you're a healthy adult with no issues, that stress that I felt compared to our kids, and that lack of connection. And I appreciate that the superintendent and the school district wants to make sure we're in school, because there's so many districts across the country that haven't been. The kids have to be in school, and we can keep them safe. But just the emotional connection, the emotional, their psychological health, working with, bullying has been another thing we've talked about, and how kids are treating each other, and things that we've got to be kinder, and we've got to be across the board. How do we address those really real issues that have just exploded with COVID? So it's something that, from the security standpoint, that I walked on this commission, and as a flight attendant who worked for an airline that lost 2 planes on 9/11, I'm like a big security mom. So I came into this commission going, I'm shifted totally over to the mental health and suicide and impacts of COVID from the mental health side is just critically important to me, from our safety forums to what we do and what we can do collaboratively, not just as a commission, but as a community, and with all the resources that everybody has. We've got to be connected, and we've got to be talking, and there have to be better conversations. And these, ladies were talking about the stigma. That only happens with conversations and with trust and with building relationships. And I think that's my top priority. Absolutely.
Thank you. And I couldn't agree more. I mean, like Commissioner Joyner, I have children in the district, and that's why I'm here, is because my children drive my passion. And 15 years old and 14-year-olds, they see it all day long. They hear it, they want to help, and they don't know where to go. I hear, oh, my teacher is so busy, I don't know I can talk to them. No, you talk to them, that's what they're there for. So I hear it. I mean, Misty and I have had some great conversation about things that happen in the school district, and it's not going away. Conversations are happening, kids are reacting to their own mental health. They now are empowered to say something. They just don't have resources at their fingertips to do much. They're not going to call a hotline and say, I'm feeling this way, because they don't know who's on the other side. They don't trust who's on the other side. So it's really hard, and I agree, Commissioner Bybee, that we have to stop talking about it and do something. And I don't think there's a person in this room that would just talk about it to not do something. Yes.
Thank you, Chair Benton. I would love to address Commissioner Bybee's comments. We had a conversation coming in about the challenges, and I want to ask a question related and combine these two. I was not at the last meeting, and one of the topics was ensure there are resources for those that we see are suffering from severe emotional disturbances. So my first question is, how do we ensure resources? And then this lovely group for family engagement, Maria mentioned, it's very dangerous to empower families with knowledge when we don't have the resources. I don't think we can wait for that. We can't sit in this void. I've been doing this for 20 years. The resources have always been an issue. But we can empower families with the help of wonderful resources in the community that still might be safe and can still relieve some of the suffering that these young people and families are experiencing. So I think we have to tackle it. We can't keep waiting for the resources.
Yeah, and I think to answer your first question, I think it was Commissioner Sanchez who wanted that to be one of our target goals, so maybe she can answer it better since she posed the question how that we might be able to ensure. If you don't mind, Commissioner Sanchez.
Yeah, thank you. A lot of that came from the idea that, just to what Commissioner Bybee was saying, that there's a lot of folks who've said, I'm having, a serious mental health crisis, or I think let me say it this way. I think the positive thing about the pandemic is that it has brought about the need for mental health. And I think that's a really good place to start from. And I have actually noticed that there's been an uptick, at least on our end, of people reaching out for crisis intervention, people reaching out for therapy. And I do agree, though, that the resources, we don't have a ton, but they are available. And the more we can just know about them and I think make those more available for people, that's more of my concern.
And my idea of what I understood Commissioner Sanchez's ask of the commission is that the resources are not necessarily centrally located, but how to get to them. So we're not sending them here, to send them there, to send them to the next place. That if they come to one place, there's a hub that we can like, okay, this is the crisis, this is the best professional to get you to. Not sending them to the ER that's going to hold them for 72 hours and then get them the help that they need. More of, okay, you're in the middle of a crisis now, let's get you to this person because that's what their specialty is my understanding. Because I know the work that I do, it's a lot of ping-ponging around in the services of human services that I provide. So I can only imagine in the mental health services, that's the same thing.
It is, and I do think that, one of the great things about this commission, a goal would be so that's so accessible for people and to know when you do reach out. And that's where that severe emotional disturbance came from.
Misty Allen, for the record, thank you both. I wanted to make sure I understood that because I know there's beautiful resources in the community, and what does our role look like in ensuring that? So thank you both.
I do think the point that was made earlier is relevant in that especially for families who might be coping with a lot of stigma or maybe low mental health literacy, it can be very difficult to get to the point where they're comfortable reaching out, and it can be very discouraging to reach out and then be told there's a wait list, and I don't know how to solve that problem other than with financial resources. But I do think that's. I don't know if there's a way that we could prep people that there could be a wait list and it's not a rejection. It's just an artifact of. But I do think that's an important thing to somehow address.
I was just going to say really quickly, I think that goes with mental health literacy. And I think maybe that could be one of the topics on the forum, is that how do we access services, and then how do you navigate it and be willing to, and know that wait lists aren't a rejection, but just by virtue of the way things are right now.
Commissioner Lawrence, did you have something you wanted to chime in with?
Yes, I do.
Go for it.
As a provider of community mental health services and also a person that is working very diligently to build the mental health workforce in our community in Washoe County, I very much agree and understand the challenges that we face in our community, and really understanding and meeting families and youth where they are in needing mental access to mental health services. And so it's a pretty, it's a big project. And I wish that money resources were the only, would be something that could really help us. And it certainly can't hurt us. It will definitely be there. But it's also to having those qualified mental health professionals available to be hired and to come work in public service. And so there's a lot that goes into unpacking this. And so I do agree about the mental health literacy. And if there's anything I can do to bring to this commission and bring to that work with the school district, I'd be happy to do so. I also see too that there's a lot of really powerful work that can be done with groups, with discussions with families, just about what does it mean to deal with chronic stress, and the things that we can do for ourselves, for our children, that youth can do and that families can do to lessen the impacts of what we're really dealing with, which is this chronic stress, which is not just I think we sometimes pretend like our brain isn't an organ in our body, but it is, and it affects every organ system in our body. So it affects our physical health as much as it affects how we feel and how we think. So I'll end there.
Thank you. I appreciate those comments. Commissioner Bybee, you had your light on. Did you have anything? Oh, Sheriff Balaam, did you have, is that your hand up next to your name?
Yep.
Go for it.
Real quick, the other thing I'd say on the forum is since we're getting as a community get ready to roll out the 988, that would be, although it's not for the community for people in crisis, it goes along hand in hand with mental health. And I think, that kids, although they have the texting app, the suicide hotline, that's something we should roll out in the forum, because that's just another avenue. So if they're not comfortable using those, they know that they can use 988 when that starts to roll out next year, because I know for all of our dispatching and everything, we're getting ready to build those teams and that system. So that would be something to get out ahead of it, to inform parents it's out there, and just give kids another avenue besides what they have right now to reach out for help.
Thank you for that information. Commissioner Bybee?
Yeah, so I guess too, as we're looking at this, and I would agree with everyone on finding a way, and obviously our forums are a great opportunity for that, of providing those resources, the school district website, social media, of how to find very quickly and very easily. How do you find those resources? And our forum gives us that opportunity, but it's something we need to do through all of those avenues of what the resources are, because this committee is not really set up to provide those, but we can provide an awareness and education and let people know where that is. I think also not only for mental health services, but when I look at groups like Forever 14, and Carrie Countess came to us shortly after her son committed suicide, and she created Forever 14. Finding other, and Misty probably knows more of those groups, maybe some of you do, that I do not know about, on making sure those groups, and they might be a really good group or people to have at the forum if we're looking at resources that's for teen suicide prevention. So having the resources that we can make people aware of that are not just a counselor you go to, but it's support groups. It's a family who's been through it and can provide valuable resources and an ability to get, because the key really, and Misty and I talked before we walked in, is getting people to talk about it. Suicide, that stigma, not just mental health stigma, but suicide goes up like how many more notches of why, people are not comfortable talking about suicide. It just is not something that's comfortable. It's not something that's easily conversational, but how critical it is to be having those conversations so that the kid, and what resources for our kids in the schools, networking and groups in the schools, kids and groups that can support kids before, you have another suicide, before, to help them with mental health, not just going to a counselor, but what other innovative, I'm sure throughout the country, there's programs and instituted in schools, mentoring programs, peer-to-peer, things that will help our kids in the classrooms today. And I guess this commission can't do all that, but we can certainly try to collaborate and put that together in a format to make sure that we are putting that out in our forums and social media and on the website to promote and educate. Educate and awareness, I guess, really is probably our key role as a commission.
I would agree 100% with you. Any other discussions? Dr. Benuto, you're leaning in.
No, I think I agree with it sounds like the consensus is that there would be a focus on mental health. I really like the SMI focus proposed by my fellow commissioner, as well as it sounds like the other consensus was mental health literacy kind of as a component.
Yeah, and
mental health literacy? Yeah, it refers to kind of knowledge, essentially knowledge of mental health, and that could be broad. So it could be, what is something like depression, or what is something like anxiety? How would I know I'm experiencing that? What are typical services? At least with the population that I work with, which tends to be individuals who tend to have lower educational attainment. I work a lot with the Latinx population. There is not a clear understanding of what it means to have a mental illness or what it means to receive mental health services. And so mental health literacy would be kind of, in the work that I do is focused on education around those topics. So I think as Commissioner Sanchez suggested earlier, it could include helping people understand what the process of attaining mental health services entails. So, you might make that phone call and it might not mean that tomorrow you have an appointment. It might include some waiting time. We do also, one of the things that my team has done is we've taken the telenovela genre, which is like a Mexican soap opera, so to speak, and we've created short videos that were originally going to be with live actors but ended up being animated because of the pandemic. But we show what a first session in psychotherapy looks like. So the idea is educating the population about what therapy entails. You're not probably going to lie on a couch and talk about, your feelings and what an ink blot looks like. It's much different than what is oftentimes portrayed in the media.
And I would just say really quickly to add on to that, that's awesome. And I think before you can even talk about SED or severely emotionally disturbed individuals, that to have the mental health literacy is probably your first step. So if you're going to make steps, that would be the first one I would suggest, because then you can have that broad based view of this is what depression is, this is what you want to look out for, this is what anxiety is, this is what PTSD looks like, just kind of a broad overview, and then encourage people to reach out accordingly from there.
Perfect. So my goal for today is, one, we should set a date. We voted last meeting to hold it virtually in the first week of May so that communications can start putting that out there, getting parents informed and prepared. And then also we should come up with 4 topics. If I am looking to the vice chairwoman because she was the expert last year, and I'm going to try to fill that shoe this year. Did we do 20-minute sessions? So it was 15 minutes, and then we had some time for question and answers, and they could do 2 sessions within that hour. And so we're hoping, I mean, it's totally up to you guys. Do we do the same format last year? And I'll tell you how we did it. We did it in the morning, at the lunch hour, and then in the evening, so parents can go at any time. They can go to all 3, so they can get every topic that was available to them. And we had the same topics were offered, and we had presenters or subject matter experts from the community that we sought out to present on these topics. And America has posted those topics up there for us. And I'm hearing what you guys are saying, and I think some of these can be combined, like the mental health literacy, I think would pair well with the 988 that the sheriff is talking about. But I also am mindful that do we want to overload all of this into a 20-minute session? Because I want to get the best bang for our buck. I want our parents to get the information that they are there for. So I don't want to pair up something that is really important to us as a commission in a 20-minute session. I don't want to pair up 2 things that are very powerful, that we want to really get the message out there. And then looking, if you can scroll down, America, to the topics that we've discussed in the past meetings this year. Opiate overdose was a big thing because our community within the schools have experienced that within the last year and a half or so. Driver safety and gun safety were some things that came up that were very passionate to us. Sex trafficking, I think, needs to be a continued conversation, as I've heard it on this commission a few times. And then also absenteeism. So I'm opening it up to you guys if we can narrow it down to 4 topics, whether they can be combined or not. But just to get a jump start so that I can start reaching out to some of the community providers or maybe to the commissioners if they are so willing to present on these items.
This is Commissioner Flores. Thank you. I do have a question, and perhaps it's one that that Commissioner Sanchez can assist with. But when I look at it, I know being asked to be a member of this group and being encouraged to share experiences based on my perspective. I do know, and school police could potentially weigh in on this, is that the majority of referrals that we receive from the school police are substance abuse related. And knowing that a lot of the youth that we manage here have co-occurring disorders, meaning that there's a mental health diagnosis that's occurring simultaneously with substance use, whether it be alcohol or the whole host of drugs that we know about. Concentrated cannabis is something that we're seeing at an alarming rate of increase. And so I'm not sure if that's a standalone or if that's something that could be incorporated into the mental health piece, but statistically speaking, they for the majority of the youth that I see, which still are a small percentage of all the youth in the school district, they go hand in hand. So I just wanted to put that out there for the experts to perhaps contemplate.
Great idea. I think it should, I don't know, I'll speak for myself. I think it should stand alone because I think any one of us can talk about co-occurring disorders for an hour or so.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I was thinking that's a great standalone one along with the opioid dependency you already had, I think, on your topics list. But yeah, that's very scary and very important.
And I see Sheriff Balaam has his hand raised, which I'm going to lead to him, but I have a question for him about gun safety and driver safety. Do you think those could be one of the same 20-minute conversations?
They probably could, because those are short. I mean, I would say you could probably combine those, because I would echo what Commissioner Flores said on the opioids. Is I think the one thing we need to add to the co-occurring is with the fentanyl, because we are using more and more Narcan. I see it on my pass down almost on a weekly basis now. And for all of us that have lived through those other epidemics, like for the crack and the meth epidemic, this one's different, because with this one, when you go buy any drug on the street, the odds of it having fentanyl is extremely high. Everything we're seizing, whether it's marijuana, whether it's oil, whether it's, oxycodone, it has fentanyl in it. And for parents that may think or have, and this is for the co-occurring, they have to sit down with their kids, and if they just think their kids are using marijuana, have that discussion that if they're buying it on the streets, there is a very good chance that it's going to have fentanyl. And we're just seeing a lot of that. And then on the gun safety and driving, you could have that as one. That'd be easy to do.
I'd like to add to that if I can.
Yes, Commissioner Joyner.
I really appreciate both of these topics. And I think overall our slant, when we're advertising this to parents, should be like, what can you do as a parent to make sure your child isn't in this situation? And I like what the sheriff just said, because I think, personally, I don't think currently my children have those issues, but we have the conversation. We just had the conversation about how everything on the street right now is laced with fentanyl, but I think parents will be more interested in attending and know that it's relevant to them if we talk about how do you make sure your kids don't fall into this. You may not think they have a mental health issue. Often we parents don't know. You may not think that your child has a substance abuse issue. Often we parents don't know. So I just want to make sure that we tie it back into why parents should listen, like how to prevent your children from falling falling into what we are seeing commonly in the district, or from becoming victims of some of the greatest tragedies we're seeing right now, or whatever it is. But just so that some of us parents who don't think we have those issues will know that we still need to listen, and that the focus will be what can we specifically do in our houses? What are the conversations we should be having specifically, rather than abstractly?
Thank you for those comments, Commissioner Joyner. Commissioner Bybee.
So I have a question, excuse me. I have a question on driver safety. Are we talking about teenage drivers? Are we talking about pedestrian safety and the adults that drive in our schools and on our streets? Driver safety, to me, I'm very unclear on.
It can be all of the above. I think with the recent pedestrian safety, we were talking about that, and then we were also talking, I think we talked about teenage driving safety at our last meeting.
Okay.
So I think
if I may, this is
Commissioner Flores, go for it.
Thank you. It was a couple of meetings ago, I believe, that I made this suggestion. We run a juvenile traffic court out of our agency, and I had mentioned that we're seeing an increase of crashes related to youth who are driving, particularly without a license, and we work closely with this Nevada State Police, and they actually provide instruction to the juveniles who come through our court. We have been working with them on how it is we could support their educational campaign. So that's the reason I had brought it up earlier. And so that's just a little bit of a background. It is something that we're talking about, things that have great lethality. Overdosing, we're talking about suicide, a child behind the wheel, driving without experience, without a license, and potentially under the influence, has high lethality. And for that reason, I felt it rose to the level of potentially being an appropriate subject for this forum.
Thank you. I appreciate that clarification, because I know we've talked in this commission too about pedestrian safety, about safe routes to school, about Vision Zero, and all the things, related to, because we had such a rash of pedestrian, in our school zones a couple of years ago. And I agree with you though for driver safety, teen driver safety, but I also agree with Commissioner Joyner. As we're looking at all these topics, why would parents want to go hear about a particular topic? What is drawing, what are we providing for them that would make me as a parent or now as a grandparent say, hey, yeah, I need to go. These are really important. I think always keeping that in mind of the topics we pick. And I think in the past we've done a pretty good job, of the topics we've covered, but always keeping our focus on what does that mean to the parents and what benefit can we give to our parents who are coming or going online to get information that we're trying to relay to them. And I guess the mental health, I think, is standalone. I don't know, there's so much. I mean, if I look at the substance abuse, co-occurring disorder, the fentanyl, it is, I don't know if we can put that all as well as mental health, or if the mental health suicide is a separate standalone to the, I know they're all related, but that seems like such a huge, in 20 minutes, I don't know that we could even touch the substance abuse co-occurring disorder, let alone go into mental health and suicide. So, and Chair Benton, you had your focus, which I agree with you, is to make sure that we can cover and at least give a good, highlights of information, bullet points on what they need to do, and then resources, links to agencies, links to articles, links to, other videos or things that more information if on that topic that is going to be outside 20 minutes, because that's pretty quick. And all of us who've done these know how fast those go. So that would be my only comments.
And the thing that I like about this forum that we did last year is all of the videos were recorded from the one of the sessions, and they were all posted on the Safe and Healthy Schools website. So if somebody reached out and said, hey, I missed all 3 opportunities, they were referred to those websites. So we can certainly use that as a format to give out the information, and then parents can go back and rewatch it if there was so much information in that 20-minute session. I think that's the only saving grace that I see in a 20-minute session of crammed information.
Yes, Chair Benton, thank you. I'm curious, I remember last forum, it was really too quick, and we couldn't have any interaction with the parents attending. Might it be more valuable to have a 45-minute presentation on these important topics and have, less topics, more time?
And that is up to the commission. We don't have to follow the format. I just laid it out so that you guys saw how we did it last year. I'm okay with whatever the commission decides.
Do you think that will lose people's level of attention in a 45-minute time frame? Because I agree depth is important. I think that people start to glaze out very quickly, though, and so I just kind of putting that out there as a possible discussion point.
Could we look at 30 minutes instead of 20? Kind of in the middle. I agree. Are we going to lose people? But 20 minutes is just so quick. You barely touch it, but we don't want to lose them either. So is 30 maybe a more realistic, because it gives you a little bit more time and resources?
I think so. Yeah, I think 30 would you'd be able to maintain attention and integrate a little bit more discussion.
And again, really, it's like 5 minutes at the beginning where there's some introductions. I did ask that one of the Board of Trustees is available for introductions. Last year it was kind of short notice for the board president, but historically one of the board members of the Board of Trustees is available for introductions. So hopefully it's 5 to 7 minutes of introductions, and then the rest is for content, and then it's a wrap up at the end. And that is done live by our moderator. So whoever that is, and it can be a short thank you, and that's it, if that's what we choose as a board. The format is really up to us as a board or as a commission. So if we want it to be 25 minutes each session, that gives us a total of 10 minutes for introductions and wrapping up. It can be, however, if we want it to be an hour and a half, we can make it an hour and a half. But again, I think we decided last year that an hour was just enough time so people that are on their lunch break can hop on and do what they wanted to do. I will tell you, memory serves me correctly, we had the best interest in the morning and the evening. The lunch break was kind of a lower number. We had 200 people join the forum, and I think Dr. McNeil and I were talking about it. It was the morning and the evening sessions that were more well attended than the lunchtime. And again, if we decide only morning and evening are best and we make them an hour and a half, we have the option right now to plan that. And that's what my goal is today, is to decide what works best. Are these some heavy hitter topics that we want to make them 30 minutes and we do it an hour and 15 minutes? It's whatever you guys as the commission want. And truly, if you guys want to throw it out there in a motion, now would be an appropriate time. We've had some great discussion. I think the first thing we should do is look at the calendar for May and decide on a date. We have been asked to not do it on a Tuesday because that's when the board, yes, Dr. Lamarca.
Thank you, Chairman Benton. Megan Downs contacted me, so they would propose the 4th, the 5th, the 11th, or the 12th. Vice President Diane Nicolette is already holding those dates. President Angie Taylor is attempting to. That's a little bit more difficult right now. But those are the 4 dates that appear to be the best possibilities for the school district staff.
And we like Dr. Nicolette. She was a former commissioner. Legal, can we move it from the day that we already voted on? We said it had to be, the motion that was passed last meeting was the first week of May. Can we?
You could just do a motion to change
The date.
the date.
Okay, thank you.
So you did say the 4th and the 5th, which is the first week of May.
Mm-hmm.
So we could, the motion could include the 4th or the 5th, or we would make specific which one of those. And then how many topics have we decided on? I guess that's what you're asking for. How many topics, how long? And I prefer I prefer the 30 minutes, but I guess how many topics are we going to do? 2? Are we going to do 4? And people will have a chance to come back twice?
Yep, so let's do this. Let's make some separate motions. One motion that decides on the day, then the next motion that decides on the topics, and then the next motion be the time frame, hour and a half, so that we have 3 clear motions for our fabulous recording secretary.
And please, since you combined both agenda items, make it specific to the forum, if that's what you're looking to do.
I have a question. If I recall correctly, last year there were multiple topics and people could choose, so we could pick theoretically 4 topics over 1 hour, something like that. Okay.
Yeah, so how we did it is we paired 2 topics that were opposite in ideas, and then the next 2 were opposite. So we did one at like 8:10, and then the other one at 8:30, and there were all 4 topics were discussed within that hour. Right? Yes.
Chair Benton, I just wanted to confirm, did we have translators at the last forum separate? And I'm wondering, I'm just throwing out there, would it be wonderful to have a bilingual session or a Spanish-speaking session on its own right?
We did have translators available at the last forum. And it was introduced as if they needed translators to let the moderator know. I'm almost certain.
Okay. I should know this, but
If not, we will work with communications to make sure that happens.
So our first task is to select a date, is that
Yes.
correct? I make a motion for Wednesday, the May 4th. Lorraine Benuto for the record.
I second the motion for May 4th
And just to clarify for the record, for the safety forum?
for the safety forum.
Okay, we have a motion on the table to have our 2022 annual safety forum for May 4th. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, the motion carries unanimously. Thank you so much. And the next motion that I am looking for is to decide on the topics of the 2022 safety forum. I will take a stab at this one. I make a motion that for our 2022 annual safety forum, we have the topics of mental health literacy combined with 988 education as one topic. Second topic being co-occurring disorders in the use of Narcan as the second topic. The third topic being gun safety along with driver safety. And the fourth topic being being connected to prevention of suicide. Of course. So the topics that I propose are mental health literacy and 988 education as one topic. The second topic is co-occurring disorders and the use of Narcan. The third topic is gun and driver safety. And the fourth topic is connection to prevention of suicide.
Could I get a clarification? On the co-occurring disorders, and we talked about fentanyl, would that be under a bigger topic of substance abuse? Because we had some opioid overdose, substance abuse. Is it a substance abuse kind of the bigger title with co-occurring disorders, and Narcan is part of, and the fentanyl is what the sheriff brought up. So I'm trying to tie, tie them into a nicer package.
Yes, so my understanding of co-occurring disorder is mental health and substance abuse. Sometimes substance abuse is their self-medication of their mental health disorders. So it can certainly be talked about with the overdose in that under that topic. And then to the sheriff's topic is when our youth or anybody in the community thinks they're buying a illegal drug or even marijuana, most oftentimes it's laced with fentanyl. And that can be used or discussed under that topic.
Okay, so it's co-occurring disorder and
Narcan education.
Narcan education, which is not specific to fentanyl, right? The Narcan you use for any overdose, correct?
No.
It's opioids.
It is specific to fentanyl only. Correct me if I'm wrong,
This is
Sheriff.
Commissioner Flores. I'm sorry.
Go for it, Commissioner Flores.
Thank you. You know, when I threw out the co-occurring, but as I'm thinking about it, that's vernacular that we typically use in our fields that to families may be less identifiable. It's just a thought, maybe the substance use as the overarching name might be more informative, and then laced into that conversation could be the mental health crossover. As I think about it now, that makes more sense to me, but I'm certainly open to anything.
Certainly amend my motion to change the word co-occurring disorder to substance abuse and misuse.
So maybe that topic would be substance abuse, which obviously would include co-occurring disorders and fentanyl and Narcan and everything that goes into that would fall under the substance abuse topic that we'd be covering.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you.
America, are you good with that? Or should I repeat it?
One more time.
Okay. The first topic is mental health literacy and the use of, or the education of 988. Second topic is substance abuse and misuse. Third topic is gun and driver safety. And the fourth topic is connection to prevention of suicide.
I, Lorraine Benuto, second that motion.
Thank you. With that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Ooh. Please.
Aye.
We're going to stop that motion. We'll have to vote in just a second. Since it is an action item, I have to look for public comment. America, is there any public comment on this item?
There is no public comment.
Thank you. Okay, now we will take the vote. With that, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? Motion carries unanimously. With that, we will move into item 3.01. This is the item reserved for public comment.
Mr. Chair, I thought there was a third item you wanted, how long? We
That's
did not
correct.
decide.
Thank
You need
you.
a motion on the time, correct?
Thank you.
Okay, can I go ahead and make a motion that we have each session to be 30 minutes with a 10-minute intro?
Perfect. So that is 70 minutes?
And that would give us, if the intros are a little longer, it would be an hour and 15 minutes roughly.
Okay.
So maybe motion for the forum, safety forum, to be scheduled for 1 hour and 15 minutes, 2 30-minute sessions, and up to 15 minutes introductions.
This is Misty Allen. I'll second the motion to have the safety forum be 75 minutes.
Thank you. With that, America, is there any public comment?
No, Chair Benton, there is no public
Thank you.
comment.
With that, we have a motion and a second. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed? With that, motion carries unanimously. Because I opened the items together, I'm going to go back to item 2.04 to make sure there is not any action that the commission would like to take. There was action at the last agenda, or the last meeting, so we just wanted to make sure that there was no action today. Okay. With that, we'll close item 2.04 and 2.05. And we will move on to item 3.01, which is public comment. And this public comment is time for public that are invited to speak at this time on topics that are not specifically addressed on the agenda. America, do we have any public comment?
And then I just wanted to comment, I know Commissioner Joyner did want to make general public comment, but because she is appearing virtually, the way the rules require for a virtual appearance is email. And so if, since we don't have any people in the audience, then she has to email her comment rather than appear virtually and make her comment, since we want to do the same access for everybody.
And to clarify, that will still be placed on public record if she emails it after our meeting.
Yes.
Thank you.
There is no public comment.
Thank you. Our next meeting is March the 7th of 2022 here in the boardroom at 2 o'clock. With that, the meeting is adjourned at 3:53.